citizen, I wander with the breeze. Got no chains to tie me down, I'm living as I please. World citizen, I cross the ocean wide. Maps are drawn enough for me on this endless ride. World citizen, I'm a nomad everywhere. Borders only in the mind, breathing freedom in the air. World citizen, no flag to call my own. Every place feels like my own, every street is known. World citizen, sky above and ground below. I belong to endless lands, with a spirit free flow. World citizen, I'm a nomad everywhere. Borders only in the mind, breathing freedom in the air. World citizen, sky above and ground below. I belong to endless lands, with a spirit free flow. World citizen, sky above and ground below. I belong to endless lands, with a spirit free flow. With a spirit free flow. With a spirit free flow. World citizen, sky above and ground below. I belong to endless lands, with a spirit free flow. World citizen, sky above and ground below. I belong to endless lands, with a spirit free flow. World citizen, sky above and ground below. I belong to endless lands, with a spirit free flow. World citizen, sky above and ground below. I belong to endless lands, with a spirit free flow. World citizen, I'm a nomad everywhere. Borders only in the mind, breathing freedom in the air. World citizen. World citizen, I wander with the breeze. Got no chains to tie me down, I'm living as I please. World citizen, I cross the ocean wide. Maps are drawn enough for me on this endless ride. World citizen, I'm a nomad everywhere. Borders only in the mind, breathing freedom in the air. World citizen, no flag to call my own. Every place feels like my own, every street is known. World citizen, sky above and ground below. I belong to endless lands, with a spirit free flow. World citizen, I'm a nomad everywhere.
World turning round and round, citizen in every town. Never here, I just roam. Questions leave me alone. Suspicion in their eyes, is it wrong to live in disguise? Misdemeanor or a crime? I just wonder all the time. You don't need my ID, just let me be, let me be. Dirty bacon on my trail, in this world I won't fail. Catch me if you can, always moving, I'm the man. Rooms with no names, just beds full of thoughts in my head. On a train or in the sky, I'm the one who loves to fly. No chains to hold me down, freedom's what I found. You don't need my ID, just let me be, let me be. Dirty bacon on my trail, in this world I won't fail. Catch me if you can, always moving, I'm the man. Rooms with no names, just beds filled with thoughts in my head. On a train or in the sky, I'm the one who loves to fly. No chains to hold me down, freedom's what I found. You don't need my ID, just let me be, let me be. Dirty bacon on my trail, in this world I won't fail.
Borders only in the mind, breathing freedom in the air. World citizen, sky above and ground
The roommate told police that the roommate received messages from Robinson about the shooting, and he did provide those messages to police.
In a stunning twist, Charlie Kirk's killer's own roommate has stepped forward in court, handing over damning messages and making revelations no one saw coming. What he exposed about Robinson's mindset could completely shift the trial. Let's dive in. The intimate confession that broke the case wide open. The assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10, 2025, sent shockwaves through the conservative movement and the entire nation. But what truly broke this case wide open wasn't sophisticated FBI surveillance techniques or high-tech forensics. It was something far more intimate and chilling. It was a series of text messages exchanged between the killer and his romantic partner, messages so detailed and disturbing that they would become the centerpiece of one of the most politically charged murder trials in recent American history. Tyler James Robinson, a 22-year-old from southern Utah, had just committed what prosecutors would later call an act of ideological terrorism. But in the immediate aftermath of his heinous crime, he didn't flee into hiding or maintain his silence. Instead, he did something that would ultimately seal his fate. He confessed everything to the person he loved most in the world. That person was Lance Twiggs, Robinson's roommate and romantic partner, described in court documents as a biological male in the process of transitioning to female. The relationship between these two young men would prove to be far more than just a footnote in this tragic story. It would become the key that unlocked the entire conspiracy and revealed the disturbing motivations behind one of the most shocking political assassinations in modern American history. To understand the full gravity of what transpired, we need to go back to that fateful day when Charlie Kirk, the 31-year-old founder of Turning Point USA, arrived at Utah Valley University for what would be his final.
Get top quality flooring professionally installed at unbeatable prices with Express Flooring. Choose from our warehouse
Public appearance.
Charlie Kirk arrives for Turning Point USA's event, the American Comeback Tour. It's the first of a 15-stop tour of colleges, something Charlie Kirk has become famous for.
Kirk was there as part of his signature Prove Me Wrong campus tour, an event that had made him famous for engaging directly with students in heated political debates. What no one in that crowd of 3,000 students could have imagined was that roughly 200 yards away, positioned on a nearby rooftop, Tyler Robinson was preparing to commit an act that would change American politics forever.
A single shot rings out. Charlie Kirk is hit in the neck. Chaos unfolds.
The single .30-06 round fired from Robinson's Mauser Model 98 bolt-action rifle, an heirloom gifted to him by his father on his 18th birthday, struck Kirk in the neck with devastating precision. The conservative activist and media personality was pronounced dead at the scene, becoming a martyr for millions of his followers and igniting a political firestorm that continues to burn to this day. But while law enforcement launched what would become a 33-hour manhunt, Robinson was already making what would prove to be the most catastrophic mistake of his criminal enterprise. Rather than maintain operational security and disappear into the American wilderness, he was compelled by love, guilt, and perhaps a twisted need for validation to share his darkest secret with the one person who meant everything to him. The text message exchange began with Robinson directing Twiggs to look under his computer keyboard, where a handwritten note waited like a ticking time bomb. That note, photographed by police and later presented as evidence, contained just 17 words that would change both of their lives forever. I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. What followed was perhaps one of the most chilling and intimate criminal confessions ever captured in digital format. Twiggs, clearly shocked and hoping against hope that this was some kind of twisted joke, responded with desperate disbelief.
After reading the note, the roommate responded, "What? You're joking, right? Robinson, I am still okay, my love, but I'm stuck in Orem for a little while longer yet."
But Robinson's response shattered any illusion that this might be some kind of sick prank. With a casualness that would later shock prosecutors and the American public alike, he not only confirmed what he had done, but began to share operational details about his escape plan.
"Shouldn't be long until I can come home, but I gotta grab my rifle still. To be honest, I had hoped to keep this secret till I died of old age."
The level of premeditation revealed in these messages was staggering. Robinson hadn't acted in a moment of passion or temporary insanity. This was a carefully planned assassination that he had hoped to take to his grave. He had scouted the location for over a week, purchased expensive equipment including a $2,000 scope, and had even prepared contingency plans for retrieving his weapon from what he called his drop point. When Twiggs pressed him with the obvious question, "You weren't the one who did it, right?" Robinson's response was as chilling as it was definitive.
"Robinson, I am. I'm sorry. Roommate, I thought they caught the person. Robinson, no, they grabbed some crazy old dude, then interrogated someone in similar clothing.
This exchange revealed not only Robinson's guilt, but also his awareness of the massive law enforcement response already underway. The FBI and local authorities had indeed detained and questioned multiple individuals in their desperate search for the shooter, but Robinson knew they had the wrong people. He was still free, still armed, and still dangerous. What makes these text messages even more disturbing is the casual, almost affectionate tone Robinson maintained throughout his confession. Even as he described committing one of the most shocking political assassinations in American history, he continued to address Twiggs as "my love" and expressed more concern for his partner's well-being than for the life he had just taken.
Going to attempt to retrieve it again. Hopefully they have moved on. I haven't seen anything about them finding it. Roommate, how long have you been planning this? Robinson, a bit over a week, I believe.
So you think you know Wicks, but do you really? First up, we've got
Revelation of the timeline was crucial for prosecutors building their case for premeditated murder. This wasn't a spontaneous act of violence or a moment of temporary insanity. Robinson had been planning Charlie Kirk's assassination for over a week, methodically preparing for what he saw as a necessary act of political violence. Perhaps most chilling of all was Robinson's explanation of his motive when Twiggs finally asked the question that was burning in both their minds: why? His response revealed the ideological hatred that had driven him to commit murder.
Robinson, why did I do it? Roommate, yeah. Robinson, I had enough of his hatred. Some hate can't be negotiated out.
These words would become central to the prosecution's case, providing clear evidence of political motivation and premeditated intent. Robinson had become radicalized by what he perceived as Charlie Kirk's hatred and had convinced himself that violence was the only solution to what he saw as an irreconcilable ideological conflict. The text messages also revealed the operational details of Robinson's escape plan and his growing paranoia as law enforcement closed in. He described having to abandon his rifle in a wooded area, wrapped in a towel to avoid leaving fingerprints, and his increasing anxiety about police presence near his planned retrieval point.
I can get close to it, but there is a squad car parked right by it. I think they already swept that spot, but I don't want to chance it.
But perhaps the most telling aspect of these messages was how they revealed Robinson's character, or lack thereof. Even as he confessed to murder, he seemed more concerned about disappointing his father than about the life he had taken.
I'm worried what my old man would do if I didn't bring back Grandpa's rifle. IDEK if it's had a serial number, but it wouldn't trace to me.
The casual way Robinson discussed the mechanical details of his crime, including his concerns about serial numbers and his bizarre jokes about the anti-fascist messages he had engraved on his bullets, painted a picture of a young man completely detached from the moral gravity of what he had done.
Remember how I was engraving bullets? The effing messages are mostly a big meme. If I see notice bulge UWU on Fox News, I might have a stroke.
These text messages, preserved forever in digital format and later read aloud in court, would prove to be the smoking gun that sealed Robinson's fate. But they also revealed something else: the crucial role that Lance Twiggs would play, the star witness, in what promised to be one of the most closely watched trials in American history. The intimate partner who had received Robinson's confession would now become the key to ensuring his conviction. The roommate's dark past and troubling influence. While the text messages between Tyler Robinson and Lance Twiggs provided prosecutors with the confession they needed to secure a conviction, they also raised disturbing questions about the relationship between the killer and his roommate. Who was Lance Twiggs? What role, if any, had he played in Robinson's radicalization? And how did two young men from conservative Utah end up sharing not just a home, but a twisted worldview that would ultimately lead to political assassination? The answers to these questions would emerge gradually, painting a picture of a troubled young person whose own own dark past and radical beliefs may have contributed to the ideological environment that produced America's youngest political assassin in decades. Lance Twiggs, described as a 22-year-old biological male in the process of transitioning to female, had been Robinson's roommate and romantic partner for approximately a year before the assassination. But according to explosive revelations from anonymous family sources, Twiggs brought to their relationship a history of personal struggles and radical political views that may have helped create the toxic environment in which Robinson's murderous plans took shape. The first glimpse into Twiggs's troubled background came from neighborhood witnesses who had observed the couple together in the weeks leading up to the assassination.
Yeah, he was walking with him.
Were they holding hands?
Yeah, they were. So, yeah, they drove off in his car, the Dodge Challenger.
But it was the testimony of a local resident who had seen them together approximately 2 weeks before the shooting that provided some of the most revealing insights into their relationship.
It was about the time I saw them, so...
Okay, how long ago was that?
I would say about 2 weeks ago.
And so they looked like they were a couple?
Yeah. Yeah.
What struck witnesses most was Robinson's dramatically different appearance during this period.
And he was dressed all in black?
Yeah, definitely.
And you thought he was weird?
Yeah, I definitely, yeah.
What was weird about him?
Just the way he walked and just the way I've seen him.
This transformation in Robinson's appearance and behavior, witnesses noted, coincided with his deepening relationship with Twiggs and his reported shift from conservative to progressive political views. The timing was not coincidental, according to family sources, who would later provide devastating insights into Twiggs's background and influence. According to anonymous statements from a family relative, Twiggs had been expelled from his parents' home at age 18 due to ongoing issues with substance abuse, intense video game addiction, and conflicts over gender identity. The relative painted a picture of a young person struggling with multiple serious issues while harboring what they described as deep-seated resentment toward mainstream society. Perhaps most significantly for understanding the political dimensions of the assassination, the family source claimed that Twiggs harbored a stated hatred for conservatives and Christians, views that aligned perfectly with the ideological motivation that prosecutors would later identify as Robinson's motive for killing Charlie Kirk. The relative described Twiggs as someone who always tried to put on the act that he had changed, but suggested that beneath this surface transformation lay unresolved anger and radical political views. After being expelled from the family home, Twiggs had briefly lived with grandparents before securing employment and renting space, eventually ending up in the St. George townhome where he would meet and begin his relationship with Tyler Robinson. What made this living arrangement particularly significant was that Twiggs's initial college roommates had eventually left, paving the way for Robinson to move in about a year before the assassination. This meant that for nearly a full year, Robinson had been
We have got to the point where literally anybody can build a fully working app without knowing how to code. This is Base 44. This is a first look at the current industry-leading AI app builder, and you wouldn't believe the kind of apps that people are creating. Smart nutrition apps, inventory trackers, onboarding tools, you name it. And if the only thing stopping me from making the app is the idea, then why not build an app that gives me endless app ideas? So let's make it. Pro tip, I draft the full app spec in ChatGPT, and then I drop the prompt directly into Base 44. It gives me super detailed structure. And here it is. Everything I laid out in detail as it goes. This is pretty awesome, but I want to make it playful. So I'm going to add a swipe left and swipe right interface. The same usability we all know. Now I'm going to add one more feature. So every idea
been living in close quarters with someone whose worldview was diametrically opposed to his own family's conservative values and who, according to family sources, harbored active hostility toward the very political movement that Charlie Kirk represented. The influence of this relationship became even more apparent when witnesses described conversations they had overheard between the couple.
I remember them talking about a doctor's appointment. It was about 2 weeks ago, I would say.
And they were kissing?
Yeah.
These observations suggested that Twiggs was actively pursuing gender transition treatment, a process that would have been deeply personal and potentially emotionally charged. For Robinson, whose own journey from conservative Republican to radical leftist activist had reportedly begun around the same time as his relationship with Twiggs, this intimate exposure to transgender issues may have contributed to his growing hostility toward figures like Charlie Kirk, who had become prominent critics of transgender ideology and policies. The timing of Robinson's ideological transformation was particularly striking when viewed in the context of his relationship with Twiggs. Family members told investigators that Robinson had become more political in recent years, with this transformation reportedly accelerating during the period of his romantic relationship with Twiggs. During a recent family dinner, Robinson had specifically mentioned that Charlie Kirk was coming to Utah Valley University, and according to family members, they talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints that he had. The family member also stated that Robinson characterized Kirk as being full of hate and spreading hate, language that would later be echoed almost verbatim in his confession to Twiggs. This parallel between Robinson's private conversations with family members and his later explanation to Twiggs of his motive for murder suggested a consistent pattern of thinking that may have been reinforced and amplified through his intimate relationship with someone who shared his newfound hostility toward conservative figures. The investigation into Twiggs's background also revealed the complex family dynamics that had shaped his worldview. The family relative who spoke anonymously described ongoing conflicts over Twiggs's gender identity, with his father viewing it as disrespectful and problematic. This rejection by his own conservative family may have intensified Twiggs's hostility toward traditional values and the political figures who championed them. What made Twiggs's influence on Robinson potentially even more significant was the power dynamic in their relationship. Robinson, despite his own troubled trajectory, had come from a stable, loving family that had supported his academic achievements and celebrated his successes. Neighbors described him as having been a smart, quiet student who never caused any problems, and who had maintained good relationships with teachers and authority figures throughout his youth. In contrast, Twiggs had experienced family rejection, substance abuse issues, and social isolation, experiences that may have created a more hardened adversarial worldview. For Robinson, who was navigating his own identity crisis and ideological transformation, Twiggs may have represented not just a romantic partner, but a guide into a new way of seeing the world, one in which violence against political opponents could be justified as necessary resistance against hatred. The investigation also revealed that Twiggs had not immediately reported Robinson's confession to authorities, despite receiving detailed admissions of guilt and ongoing communications about evading law enforcement. While prosecutors ultimately decided not to charge Twiggs with any crimes related to this delay, it raised questions about his level of sympathy for or complicity in Robinson's actions. The text messages themselves provided additional insights into the dynamic between the two men. Throughout their exchange, Robinson consistently addressed Twiggs with terms of endearment like "my love," while also seeking what appeared to be validation or understanding for his actions. When Robinson told Twiggs that he had had enough of his Kirk's hatred and that some hate can't be negotiated out, he seemed to be appealing to shared values and assumptions about the justification for his violence. Twiggs's responses, while expressing shock and concern, did not include moral condemnation of the assassination itself. Instead, his questions focused on practical matters: whether Robinson had been caught, how long he had been planning the attack, and what his next steps would be. This pattern suggested a level of acceptance, if not approval, of Robinson's actions that was consistent with the shared ideological framework that family sources said characterized their relationship. Perhaps most disturbing was the revelation that Twiggs was expected to serve as a star witness at Robinson's trial, potentially testifying about the context of their messages and their relationship dynamics. This meant that the person who may have played a significant role in Robinson's radicalization would now be tasked with providing testimony that could help secure his conviction and potential execution. The complex relationship between Robinson and Twiggs represented more than just a footnote in the case. It illuminated the intimate personal dimensions of political radicalization in modern America. Here were two young people whose private struggles with identity, family rejection, and social isolation had intersected with broader political currents to create a toxic environment in which assassination could seem not just justified, but necessary. As the case moved toward trial, the role of Lance Twiggs would continue to be scrutinized not just for his value as a witness, but for his potential influence on the trajectory that led Tyler Robinson from conservative teenager to political assassin. The answers to these questions would prove crucial not just for understanding this particular crime, but for grappling with the broader challenge of preventing political violence in an increasingly polarized society. The trial, the verdict, and America's reckoning. as Tyler Robinson's case moved toward what promised to be one of the most closely watched trials in American history. The shocking revelations from Lance Twiggs and the devastating text message evidence had already fundamentally altered the trajectory of American political discourse. The intimate details of Robinson's confession, combined with the disturbing insights into his relationship with Twiggs, had transformed this from a simple criminal case into a national referendum on political violence, radicalization, and the toxic intersection of personal grievances with ideological extremism. The formal charges against Robinson were as serious as they were extensive: 7 felonies, including aggravated murder, felony discharge of a firearm causing injury, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. But what made this case unprecedented was not just the severity of the charges, but the political context that surrounded them and the implications they carried for American democracy itself. Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray, leading the prosecution, made the extraordinary decision to seek the death penalty, citing not just the heinous nature of the crime, but its broader implications for society. The prosecution's strategy would center heavily on the text messages between Robinson and Twiggs, which provided what legal experts described as the most complete and damning confession in the history of American political assassination cases. Robinson's virtual arraignment on September 16, 2025, provided the first glimpse of how the case would unfold in court. Appearing via video link from the Utah County Jail, the 22-year-old defendant sat stoically as prosecutors read portions of his text message confession aloud, marking the first time the American public heard the chilling details of his intimate admissions to Twiggs. The courtroom atmosphere was electric with tension as were presented as evidence.
These photos consisted of various messages, including content of messages between the phone contact named Tyler with an emoji icon and Robinson's roommate's device. The content of these messages.
From Southwestern Medical Foundation, this is Learning from Leaders. We sit down with changemakers.
Included messages affiliated with the contact Tyler.
The prosecution's reading of the messages in open court had a devastating impact, particularly Robinson's casual admission of guilt and his detailed descriptions of operational planning,
stating a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush. Messages related to visually watching the area where a rifle was left, and a message referring to having left the rifle wrapped in a towel.
What shocked observers most was not just the content of the confession, but the tone. Robinson's casual discussion of logistics, his concerns about disappointing his father, and his bizarre jokes about the anti-fascist messages he had engraved on his bullets.
The messages also refer to engraving bullets and a mention of a scope and the rifle being unique. Messages from the contact Tyler also mentioned that he had changed outfits.
The engraved bullets became a particularly powerful piece of evidence for prosecutors. Utah Governor Spencer Cox had previously stated that the message, "Hey fascist, catch," found on one of the bullet casings speaks for itself in terms of establishing political motive. The combination of these physical evidence and Robinson's own admissions created what legal experts described as an essentially insurmountable case for the defense. But the trial would be about more than just securing Robinson's conviction. It would become a national forum for examining the broader implications of his crime. FBI Director Kash Patel described the assassination as ideological terrorism, a characterization that elevated the case beyond simple murder to an attack on the foundations of American democratic discourse. The political ramifications extended far beyond the courtroom. Conservative figures and Republican officials seized on the case as evidence of escalating left-wing violence, while others pointed to it as a symptom of broader societal polarization that had made political violence seem acceptable to some Americans, regardless of their ideological orientation. President Trump's response was particularly significant, as he blamed radical left rhetoric for contributing to the assassination and awarded Charlie Kirk the Presidential Medal of Freedom posthumously. The decision to fly flags at half-staff nationwide transformed Kirk's death into a moment of national mourning that deepened the political significance of Robinson's trial. Perhaps no moment captured the human cost of Robinson's crime more powerfully than the public statement delivered by Charlie Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, following Robinson's arrest. Her words, delivered with a mixture of grief and defiance, illustrated how the assassination had transformed personal tragedy into a rallying cry for an entire political movement.
I first want to thank the local, state, and federal law enforcement who worked tirelessly to capture my husband's assassin so that he can be brought to justice.
but it was Erica Kirk's promise to continue her husband's work that demonstrated how Robinson's crime had ultimately failed in its apparent objective of silencing Kirk's voice.
The movement my husband built will not die. It won't. I refuse to let that happen. It will not die.
Her vow that the assassination would only strengthen the conservative movement represented a complete rejection of the logic that had apparently driven Robinson to commit murder.
If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you just have unleashed across this entire country and this world.
The role of Lance Twiggs as a key witness became increasingly complex as the case moved toward trial. While prosecutors had decided not to charge him with any crimes related to his delayed reporting of Robinson's confession, his testimony would be crucial for establishing the context and authenticity of the text messages that formed the cornerstone of the prosecution's case. The defense team faced the nearly impossible task of creating reasonable doubt in the face of Robinson's own detailed confession and the overwhelming physical evidence linking him to the crime. DNA evidence on the rifle's trigger provided direct physical confirmation of Robinson's handling of the murder weapon, while ballistics analysis confirmed that the engraved bullets found at the scene had been fired from his grandfather's Mauser rifle. As the trial date approached in early 2026, the case had already begun to reshape American political discourse in fundamental ways. Congressional Republicans, led by Representative James Comer, announced plans for hearings on social media radicalization, citing concerns about platforms like Discord and Reddit serving as breeding grounds for political extremism. The broader implications of the case extended beyond immediate policy responses. Robinson's transformation from a conservative teenager to a radical assassin had forced Americans to confront uncomfortable questions about the nature of political polarization and the pathways to extremist violence. The intimate details revealed through his relationship with Twiggs illustrated how personal grievances and identity struggles could intersect with political ideology to create dangerous instability. The community impact was equally profound. Neighbors who had known Robinson as a smart, quiet young man who never caused any problems struggled to reconcile their memories with the reality of what he had become. The shock was particularly acute for his former teacher, who described him as having been very smart, with a real mellow personality who kept to himself and never caused trouble in school. The trial itself, when it finally began, would serve as more than just a legal proceeding. It would become a national examination of how American democracy could protect itself from the kind of ideological violence that Robinson represented. The intimate revelations about his relationship with Twiggs, the chilling details of his text message confession, and the overwhelming physical evidence would combine to create a compelling narrative about the dangers of unchecked political radicalization. As Robinson sat in the Utah County Jail awaiting trial, the case had already achieved something that his assassination of Charlie Kirk had not. It had strengthened rather than weakened the conservative movement he had sought to damage. Kirk's martyrdom had elevated his message and mobilized his supporters in ways that his life alone might never have accomplished. The ultimate irony of Robinson's crime was perhaps best captured in Erica Kirk's final words to her husband's supporters.
If you want to get involved, the best way you can do that is going to tpusa.com. That's what he would say every day from this chair. Every single day. I watched his show every day.
By the time Robinson's trial concluded, it had become clear that his assassination of Charlie Kirk had achieved the opposite of its intended effect. Rather than silencing a voice he perceived as hateful, Robinson had transformed that voice into a powerful symbol of resistance to political violence. The shocking revelations about his intimate relationship with Lance Twiggs had provided prosecutors with the evidence they needed to secure justice, but they had also illuminated the complex personal and ideological factors that could drive young Americans to commit acts of unprecedented political violence. The legacy of Tyler Robinson's crime would extend far beyond his individual fate, serving as a cautionary tale about the intersection of personal grievance, ideological extremism, and the fragile nature of democratic discourse in modern America. His roommate's shocking revelations had not only broken the case wide open, they had provided a window into the darkest impulses of American political life in the 21st century. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.
He has not confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating. But all the people around him are cooperating, and I think that's very important.
Tyler Robinson, the man who shot and killed Charlie Kirk, now knows his grim fate, yet he's shown no sign of remorse. Will he face the electric chair an unrepentant man, or will he finally spill the beans on what his motivations were? Let's break it all down. The hunt and capture. The manhunt that followed Charlie Kirk's assassination would prove to be as dramatic and revealing as the crime itself, ultimately leading to the identification and capture of a suspect whose background would challenge many assumptions about political violence in America. The suspect has been publicly identified as Tyler Robinson, a 22-year-old Utah native from Washington County in southern Utah. What made this case particularly intriguing from an investigative standpoint was not just the identity of the killer, but the circumstances surrounding his capture and the wealth of evidence that law enforcement was able to compile against him. Robinson was arrested on September 12, 2025, ending a 33-hour manhunt involving the FBI, local law enforcement, and a $100,000 reward offered by the FBI. The relatively swift conclusion to the manhunt was due in large part to the cooperation of Robinson's own family, highlighting the complex personal dynamics that would come to define this case. While the assassination had been carried out with cold precision and apparent planning, the aftermath revealed a suspect who seemed unprepared for the consequences of his actions. He was taken into custody without incident after his father recognized him in grainy surveillance photos released by police and urged him to surrender. This detail would prove particularly significant in understanding the family dynamics at play, as it revealed a father willing to turn in his own son for the sake of justice, despite the personal anguish such a decision must have caused.
He's become radicalized. So many things have been learned about him so quickly. He's become totally radicalized and crazy, and it must have been traumatic because the parents are conservative people, supposed to be very nice people, living in Utah, and the father turns in the son. Boy, that's a tough deal.
Even President Trump acknowledged the difficult position Robinson's father found himself in, recognizing the extraordinary nature of a parent's decision to facilitate their own child's arrest for such a heinous crime. The evidence compiled against Robinson was overwhelming in both its volume and its damning implications. Forensic evidence strongly ties Robinson to the scene. DNA from a towel and screwdriver recovered near the discarded rifle matches Robinson's profile, as confirmed by FBI Director Kash Patel. The physical evidence alone would have been sufficient to build a strong case, but investigators were able to uncover an even more comprehensive picture of Robinson's guilt through digital forensics and witness testimony. Perhaps most revealing was the written evidence that investigators were able to recover despite Robinson's attempts to destroy it. Investigators recovered evidence of a destroyed note at Robinson's home, reconstructed through forensics, which stated he had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and I'm going to take it. This note, painstakingly reconstructed by forensic experts, provided clear evidence of premeditation and intent, crucial elements in establishing the charges that would ultimately be filed against Robinson. The digital evidence was equally damning, revealing a pattern of behavior and communication that painted a clear picture of Robinson's state of mind.
Sound familiar? Everyone's hyping AI coding. You try Cursor, but it just doesn't live up to the hype in your real code.
Leading up to the assassination, a text message exchange with an unidentified individual showed Robinson expressing hatred for Kirk and stating, "I have the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk, and he was going to do it because of his hatred for what Charlie stood for," along with the phrase, "some hatred cannot be negotiated with." These communications revealed not just intent, but also the ideological motivation that drove Robinson to commit this act of political violence. Even more revealing were Robinson's actions in the hours immediately following his crime. Hours before his arrest, Robinson appeared to confess on the Discord chat platform, messaging friends about taking responsibility for the shooting, as confirmed by a Discord spokesperson. This digital confession, combined with the physical and circumstantial evidence, created an ironclad case against Robinson that would be extremely difficult for any defense attorney to challenge. The investigation also revealed disturbing details about Robinson's preparation and mindset leading up to the assassination. FBI Co-Deputy Director Dan Bongino described Robinson's digital footage footprint as showing an obsession with Kirk, including multiple warning signs. This obsession, documented through his online activities and communications, suggested that the assassination was not a spontaneous act of violence, but rather the culmination of a growing fixation that had been building over time. Particularly intriguing was the role that Robinson's personal relationships may have played in his motivation to commit this crime. Robinson's romantic partner, who is transgender and in the process of transitioning from male to female, has been cooperative with investigators and is not a suspect. The timing of Kirk's assassination, coming as it did after his public comments describing transgender individuals as an abomination to God, raised questions about whether Robinson's personal relationship had influenced his decision to target Kirk specifically. The investigation revealed a complex portrait of a young man whose background seemed to contradict many of the typical profiles associated with political violence. Community members described him as very quiet and someone who kept to himself, with no prior criminal history mentioned in reports.
The kid was smart, quiet. He never caused any problems.
Are you shocked by this?
It was a shock. Oh yes, I am shocked. Very shocked.
This testimony from those who knew Robinson personally painted a picture of someone whose outward demeanor gave little indication of the violence he was capable of committing. Perhaps most significant was the ideological transformation that Robinson appeared to have undergone in the period leading up to the assassination. His family is described as staunchly Republican, but Robinson had reportedly veered left politically in recent years. This political evolution, combined with his online activities and personal relationships, created a perfect storm of factors that ultimately led to his decision to commit this act of political violence. The method by which Robinson carried out the assassination also revealed significant preparation and skill. This observation highlighted one of the most troubling aspects of the case, that Robinson's upbringing in a gun-owning family had provided him with the very skills that made his assassination of Kirk possible. The evidence compiled during the investigation revealed not just Robinson's guilt, but also the complex web of factors that had contributed to his radicalization and ultimate decision to commit political violence. As investigators continued to piece together the full story of how and why Robinson had decided to target Charlie Kirk, they uncovered a narrative that challenged many assumptions about political violence in America and raised difficult questions about the role of online communities, personal relationships, and political discourse in radicalizing young Americans. The assassination that shook America. The afternoon of September 10, 2025, was supposed to be just another routine speaking engagement for Charlie Kirk, a man who had built his career on challenging liberal orthodoxy and mobilizing young conservatives across American college campuses. The incident occurred mid-sentence as Kirk addressed a crowd of about 3,000 during a Q&A session on topics including transgender rights and mass shootings. In what would tragically become his final public statement, Kirk had described transgender individuals as an abomination to God, words that would take on haunting significance in light of what investigators would later uncover about his killer's personal life. The precision of the attack was chilling in its execution and devastating in its outcome. Authorities described the attack as a targeted assassination, with Kirk struck by a single long-range gunshot to the neck, severing his jugular vein and causing instant death. The clinical nature of the killing spoke to careful planning and preparation, far removed from the passionate, impulsive act of violence that many political assassinations represent. This was not a crime of opportunity, but rather a methodically executed plan that had been brewing in the mind of its perpetrator for an unknown period of time. What made the attack even more sinister was the vantage point chosen by the assassin. The shooter fired from a rooftop position, using a rifle with engraved bullet casings referencing Reddit culture and other dark places of the internet. The tactical advantage of shooting from high to low, as one expert would later observe, was like shooting fish in a barrel, providing the assassin with the easiest possible shot while maximizing the difficulty for security personnel to detect the threat until it was far too late. The immediate aftermath of the shooting was chaos incarnate, with thousands of attendees suddenly thrust into a nightmare scenario that none could have anticipated. Kirk's widow, Erica Kirk, was present at the event with their young children, adding an additional layer of tragedy to an already devastating scene. The image of a widow and her children witnessing the violent end of their husband and father would become one of the most haunting aspects of this entire ordeal, serving as a stark reminder of the human cost cost of political violence. But perhaps most disturbing of all were the cryptic messages left behind by the killer, messages that would provide crucial insights into his mindset and motivations. The bullet casings recovered from the scene told a story of someone deeply immersed in internet culture and driven by ideological hatred. Inscriptions on a fired casing read, "Notices bulges, capital OWO, what's this question mark?" Inscriptions on the 3 unfired casings read, "Hey fascist exclamation point, catch exclamation point up arrow symbol, right arrow and symbol, and 3 down arrow symbols." A second unfired casing read, "Oh Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Bella Chow, Chow, Chow." And a third unfired casing read, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO." These messages, bizarre as they may seem to those unfamiliar with certain corners of internet culture, would prove to be crucial pieces of evidence in understanding the killer's digital footprint and the online communities that may have influenced his radicalization. The sophistication of the attack raised immediate questions about security protocols and whether adequate measures had been in place to protect Kirk during his campus appearance.
This really kind of upset me because I feel that this was a kind of a lack of security, frankly. People talk because he wasn't a political candidate, but there's an assembly of 3,000 people in a fishbowl, basically sitting ducks, as was Charlie, and there was no rooftop surveillance.
As one retired police lieutenant would later observe, the absence of rooftop surveillance was a critical security failure that could have been prevented with basic precautions. The weapon used in the assassination was itself a testament to the killer's preparation and intent. The rifle, described as a long-range weapon capable of accurate shots at significant distances, was not the type of firearm that someone would casually acquire for a spontaneous act of violence. This was a tool chosen specifically for its lethality and effectiveness at the distance from which the shot was taken, further underscoring the premeditated nature of the crime. As news of the assassination spread across the nation, it became clear that this was not simply the loss of a conservative commentator, but rather an attack on the very foundations of American political discourse. The assassination prompted national mourning, with President Donald Trump ordering flags at half-staff, Vice President J.D. Vance hosting a tribute episode of Kirk's podcast, and vigils held across the U.S., including at Turning Point USA headquarters in Phoenix and the Kennedy Center in Washington.
If you think your child may have autism, it's important to act quickly. At Action Behavior Centers, we want to reduce barriers.
D.C. The political ramifications were immediate and far-reaching. It also sparked debates on political violence, with Vance and others blaming left-wing extremism for fostering the environment that led to the killing. The assassination had accomplished what Kirk himself had never been able to achieve in life. It had unified conservative voices across the political spectrum in their condemnation of political violence and their determination to seek justice for his death. What made this assassination particularly significant in the context of American political violence was its targeting of a non-elected figure whose influence came not from holding office, but from his ability to shape public opinion and mobilize political activism. Charlie Kirk represented a new generation of political influencers whose power derived from their media platforms and grassroots organizing capabilities rather than traditional political institutions. His assassination, therefore, represented an attack not just on Kirk himself, but on this entire model of political engagement that has become increasingly important in the digital age. The investigation that followed would reveal a complex web of evidence, motivation, and ideological extremism that would challenge many preconceived notions about political violence in America. As law enforcement agencies mobilized their resources to track down the killer, they would uncover a story that was both deeply personal and broadly political, involving online radicalization, relationship dynamics, and the dangerous intersection of political ideology with personal grievance. Justice, politics, and the path forward. The arrest of Tyler Robinson marked the beginning of what promises to be one of the most closely watched criminal proceedings in recent American history, as prosecutors prepare to seek the ultimate penalty against a young man whose crime has shaken the foundations of political discourse in America. Robinson is being held without bail in a Utah jail under special watch due to concerns over his safety and potential non-cooperation. The significance of this case extends far beyond the prosecution of a single individual, touching on fundamental questions about political violence, online radicalization, and the state of American democracy in the digital age. The legal proceedings against Robinson have been fast-tracked, reflecting both the severity of the charges and the intense public interest in seeing justice served. Robinson is scheduled to appear in court in Provo, Utah on September 16, 2025, facing aggravated murder charges. The decision to charge Robinson with aggravated murder rather than simple murder reflects prosecutors' belief that they can prove the additional elements necessary to make Robinson eligible for the death penalty under Utah law. The facility where Robinson is currently being held tells its own story about the seriousness with which authorities are treating this case. Tyler Robinson is currently being held without bail at the Utah County Jail, located at 3075 North Main Street in Spanish Fork, Utah. He is housed in the jail's Special Housing Unit, SHU, under a special watch protocol, which involves heightened monitoring due to the severity of his charges, potential behavioral issues, and suicide risk assessments. This level of security reflects not only the gravity of the charges against Robinson, but also the high-profile nature of the case and the potential for retaliation or harm to come to the defendant. The charges that Robinson faces carry the most severe penalties available under both Utah state law and federal jurisdiction. If convicted of aggravated murder, Robinson faces the possibility of the death penalty, pursued by Utah prosecutors. President Donald Trump and Utah Governor Spencer Cox have publicly called for the death penalty, increasing pressure on prosecutors to file a notice of intent within 60 days of arraignment. The political response to Kirk's assassination has been swift and far-reaching, revealing deep divisions in American society about the nature of political violence and its underlying causes. The federal government's response has been particularly noteworthy, both for its scope and its political implications. President Donald Trump responded swiftly to the assassination of Charlie Kirk on September 10, 2025, by ordering all U.S. flags at federal buildings, military installations, embassies, and other government properties to be flown at half-staff until sunset on September 14, 2025. The government's response went well beyond symbolic gestures, however. Trump blamed the radical left for fostering an environment of political violence through hateful rhetoric that compared conservatives like Kirk to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers, calling it directly responsible for the terrorism we're seeing today, and vowing to hold accountable those who fund it and support it. This rhetoric, while politically charged, reflects the genuine anger and concern that many conservatives feel about what they perceive as a growing climate of political violence directed against their movement. Vice President J.D. Vance's response was equally significant, both for its personal nature and its political implications. Vice President J.D. Vance, a close friend of Kirk who credited him with supporting his 2021 Senate run and 2024 VP nomination, hosted a special episode of The Charlie Kirk Show on September 15th from the White House, calling Kirk the smartest political operative I ever met, and vowing to carry on the mantle of his legacy. This unprecedented decision to use the White House as a venue for honoring a slain political activist underscored the deep personal relationships that existed between Kirk.
Are you driving way less than you used to? Do you have a clean driving record? Are you over 25? Do you
and the highest levels of government. The investigation into Robinson's motivations has revealed uncomfortable truths about the process of political radicalization in the digital age. Officials have described Robinson as holding a leftist ideology and being radicalized online through exposure to dark corners of the internet, including Reddit and other platforms. This finding challenges many assumptions about political violence and suggests that the problem of online radicalization extends across the political spectrum.
But the point here is, clearly the shooter hated Charlie Kirk. That we know, that we can say for sure. But in terms of the theories that are being spouted here, they are wild and completely without evidence.
This observation highlights one of the most challenging aspects of understanding political violence: the tendency for people to project their own political biases onto the motivations of perpetrators rather than examining the complex reality of what drives individuals to commit such acts. Perhaps most troubling of all is what Robinson's case reveals about the failure of traditional safeguards to prevent political violence.
But every single one of these analyses that I've heard, and actually even calling it an analysis is a little bit generous, something that's been missing from this is that Trump and MAGA and Republicans in their various forms have been telling us for years that certain traits are good and godly and they are the best environment for a kid to be brought up in. They tell us if you grow up in a Christian household, that's the best thing for kids. It's the best. But in this case, growing up in this...
Robinson's background challenged many conservative assumptions about what factors protect young people from radicalization and violence. The security failures that allowed Robinson to carry out his attack have prompted serious discussions about how to better protect public figures and political events.
There was no rooftop surveillance. We just learned this a year ago. And I talked to my colleagues about that, and their first thing is, well, we can't put people on roofs all the time. I'm not talking about putting Navy snipers on the roof. I'm talking to put a volunteer with a radio or a cell phone on the highest point.
These observations from experienced law enforcement professionals highlight practical steps that could be taken to prevent similar attacks in the future. The case against Robinson appears to be overwhelming, but his defense team will likely explore several avenues in their attempt to save his life. The combination of physical evidence, digital communications, witness testimony, and Robinson's own admissions creates a nearly insurmountable challenge for any defense attorney.
Confessed to authorities. He is not cooperating, but all the people around him are cooperating, and I think that's very important. We're collecting much more, including forensic evidence that is coming back from Quantico.
Despite Robinson's refusal to cooperate with authorities, the evidence against him continues to mount. The broader implications of this case extend far beyond the fate of Tyler Robinson himself. The assassination of Charlie Kirk represents a watershed moment in American political discourse, forcing a reckoning with the toxic nature of online political culture and its potential to inspire real-world violence. The case has led to firings of employees celebrating the killing, including United Airlines pilots, and warnings from officials like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis about sanctions for inflammatory statements. As the legal proceedings against Robinson move forward, they will serve as a test of the American justice system's ability to handle cases involving political violence in the digital age. The evidence suggests that Robinson's conviction is all but certain, but the questions raised by his case about online radicalization, political violence, and the protection of public figures will continue to challenge American society long after Robinson's fate has been decided. The death of Charlie Kirk and the arrest of Tyler Robinson represent more than just another case of political violence in America. They represent a fundamental challenge to the foundations of democratic discourse and a stark reminder of the real-world consequences that can flow from the toxic political culture that has increasingly come to dominate American public life. As Robinson awaits his day in court, the nation grapples with the uncomfortable truths that his case has revealed about the state of political discourse in America and the work that must be done to prevent future tragedies of this magnitude. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.
From Southwestern Medical Foundation, this is Learning from Leaders, the podcast where real conversations can create real impact.
World turning round and round, see this in every town. Never here, I just roam. Questions leave me alone. Suspicion in their eyes, is it wrong to live in disguise? Misdemeanor or a crime? I just wonder all the time. You don't need my ID, just let me be, let me be. Dirty bacon on my trail, in this world I won't fail. Catch me if you can, always moving, I'm the man. Rooms with no names, just beds filled with thoughts in my head. On a train or in the sky, I'm the one who loves to fly. No chains to hold me down, freedom's what I found. You don't need my ID, just let me be, let me be. Dirty bacon on my trail, in this world I won't fail. Catch me if you can.